Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another BookTrib live chat. I am your host this afternoon, BookTrib Babe. Please go follow me at BookTrib Babe on Twitter. You'll see me tweeting all sorts of amazing things that are going on in our book lovers community, booktrib.com. And I say it every week, come sign up for BookTrib. All you need is an email address and your favorite genre of books, and you'll be ready to go. We have everything from author interviews, giveaways, blog tours, live chats, and so much more. You could win books in all sorts of different ways, and we love our community. So come on and join. Um, and the whole reason that we're here for a live chat with New York Times bestselling author Raymond Khoury. He is the bestselling author of several novels, including The Last Templar, The Templar Salvation, and The Sanctuary. He was born in Beirut, but his family fled to Rye, New York, when he was 14 years old to escape Lebanon's civil war. He's since then worked as an architect and investment banker before becoming a successful screenwriter and producer for networks such as BBC. Today he's focusing on his writing career, and Rasputin's Shadow, which is the reason he's here to talk with us today, is his sixth novel. Lucy, what did I tell you about reading while I'm on the air? We're live. She just loves reading thriller books. I can't drag her away from this. So, can you leave the reading till later, please? Okay, that means yes. So anyway, Rasputin's Shadow. It's about Rasputin, as you can tell from the title. Rasputin was a monk blessed by God, a malicious killer, a mastermind, a fraud. Even the most lauded historians have decided which of these descriptions fit the elusive figure from Russia's past. And no one could understand his incredible rise from a starving peasant to the Tsar's most trusted advisor. No one except Leo Skobov. And so begins Rasputin's Shadow. I will welcome Raymond Khoury onto the screen so he can tell you a little bit more about the book and talk about himself. And stick around till the very end because we will be giving away 5 of these amazing books. 5 lucky winners will receive this amazing book. So stick around. Raymond will announce you, and feel free to start submitting your questions. Here we go.
Hey, hi.
Hi, Raymond. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you? Can
You're
you hear
doing
me?
well. Yes, we could hear you perfectly. So I'm going to
There
give
you
you the floor, and you could just tell everyone a little bit more about yourself and about the book, and I'll start feeding you the questions.
go. Okay. Well, as you said, it's my sixth book, and it's oh God, it's weird looking myself talking here. So it's my sixth novel. It's about the hero is again Sean Riley, who we first met in The Last Templar, and it's a contemporary thriller about a it starts off with the death of a Russian scientist, a Russian diplomat, who falls off who jumps out of a fifth-story window in Manhattan, and this death is assigned to Riley. It's a tricky situation. He's a diplomat. Was it a suicide? Was it a murder? And very quickly things spin out of control. There's Russian mobsters involved. There's a Korean carjacking gang. There's a missing high school teacher of Russian origin. Who has he run away? Has he been kidnapped? There's KGB. There's CIA. All kinds of different parties are involved in this mystery that Riley's trying to figure out. And it all seems to go back to the days of to something that has its origin back in the days of Rasputin. And so, as I did with other books, with The Last Templar and with The Sanctuary, um, I have two parallel storylines. Basically, when we're going to talk about what they're uncovering that happened in the past, we actually go back to the past and live it. So there's a parallel storyline that takes place in Russia from 1906 to 1916, which is about Rasputin and his rise to power from, as you said, from this illiterate peasant monk to the person who you could say he's pretty much. I mean, he has a his presence and his actions were a great factor in ushering in communism, which affected the world in a huge way, obviously. I'm not sure if I should be answering the questions that are coming up on the screen or. Okay, so I can't hear you, so I'm just going to go ahead and answer this question from Avery, which says, I enjoy that you switch back and forth between past and present day in your novels. Any particular reason you decided to do this? Um, yes, this this started with The Last Templar was originally a screenplay that I wrote in 1995, 96. So it was never intended to be a novel at the start. I was a screenwriter, and this was the third screenplay I ever wrote. And um, and when I wrote it, it was very much there were these the idea the the trigger to the story was to write a contemporary thriller that had to do with the Templars, the mystery, the secret of the Templars. And as a screenplay, it opened in Acre in 1291. So there's this big scene of the Battle of Acre and the last few remaining Templars escaping from the city that was being pummeled and annihilated by the Muslim armies. And then throughout the screenplay, we lived through these scenes because this was meant to be a movie. So there was for me that as a screenwriter, one of the early lessons in screenwriting is show, don't tell. You don't want to hear talking heads, people sitting in a museum talking about what they discovered or showing what they're reading in a book. You actually just want to go back and live it on screen. So The Last Templar as a screenplay was very much designed with these big epic scenes that take place back during the days of the Crusades. So when it came time to turn it into a novel many years later, 5, 6 years later, around 2000, which is when I started adapting it into a novel. It felt very natural for me to follow the same method of storytelling, if you like, because, and I think I get that a lot from readers. I get a lot of comments that the books feel like movies in the sense they're very visual, they're very visceral. You feel you're actually living through the story while you're kind of watching it unfold in your mind while you're reading it. It's not a passive experience, and that's very much something I try to do. So part of that is going back to the past, and also I love the other part of that is that I love, as I've done with several of my books, I love exploring how something from the past can have a huge impact on today. So what mysteries are there from the past that can come back and haunt us today, or that can cause upheaval or damage, or whatever you like today. So really, those are the two reasons why I use that method. So from Savvy Bookworm, I'm wondering if you have any historical figures in mind that you're dying to include in your upcoming books. Um, Good question. There's one in particular. I mean, it's not a historical figure per se, but I'd say there's been something I've really been wanting to write for a while, which is to explore the life of the character I had in The Sanctuary, the character who, at some point in his career, in his life, takes on the name of the Comte de Saint-Germain, who is a mythical fictional character from history. Um, and he's in my book, he started off as being the Raymond di Sangro who was the Principe di San Severo, a real character from 17th century Naples, and I moved him through time to where he became the Comte de Saint-Germain. I love that character. In the book he starts off as Sebastian, and I love Sebastian. I'd love to explore his whole life, maybe in more than a book, but I don't know when I'll get around to doing that. Historically, I'm very curious about the Ottoman Empire's last days. I like the period when they came close to conquering all of Europe and failed right at the end. There was one crucial battle that turned the tide, and they could have overrun Europe. So I'm curious about the leaders of the Ottoman, the Sultan at that time, and the people around him and the people opposing him. From Desmond. Hey, Desmond. I understand one of your books began as a screenplay. Do you still do any screenwriting? Well, exactly. That's that's The Last Templar. It was like I said, the third screenplay I ever wrote. Do I still do any screenwriting? Not really. I just did a project which is kind of it's for a mini series. It's a one-off. It was a really interesting opportunity to be very much in control of something. It's a 4-hour story about the idea was could a modern city like London in this instance, um, how much damage could a fire do to? So yeah, what would happen with it's a disaster movie, but it's a different take because it's we're trying to do something that's very visual, very epic, but very grounded in reality. So I did that as a little kind of break. I hadn't written a screenplay in well, really since the Last Templar came out as a novel. Um, will I write more? I don't think so. I enjoy writing the books a lot more. This was kind of a one-off, um, and um, and in fact, I'm probably going to be adapting another one of my screenplays into a novel very shortly. Jacqueline Haggerty. Hey, Jacqueline. Do you do a lot of research before you start writing? How do you go about doing this? I do probably more research than I need to, and that's kind of a writer's laziness device. That's kind of that's a way to avoid that kind of blank screen. Um, partly, I really like to know everything about what I'm writing about, even if it's so initially it's about the theme. So the Devil's Elixir, for instance, actually no, that might be too much of a spoiler. Um, the Sanctuary is about why we live, why we die, why we age medically. So I felt I really needed to know where we are scientifically about that, about the theories of aging. Is this something that's genetically programmed inside us? Is this something that's an illness? You know, people thought uh, going senile when you're old is an illness. It's, you know, oh, he's old, he's lost his mind. Then we discovered that actually there's an illness called Alzheimer's, which could be curable. So I felt the same way about aging. I wanted to know, is this something that theoretically could be curable, or is this something that we have no choice about? So before I knew what the story was, I had to do a lot of research to understand the science behind that question. And out of that research, in parallel, while doing the research, ideas come about and the story kind of starts to take shape. So that's the first level of research. Then beyond that, there are different levels of research. There's the nuts and bolts research. Where are they? Where's the story taking place? Researching that area, that location, looking for interesting places to set scenes in. Every scene, every chapter. I say scene. It's a screenwriting method, but every chapter, every location, every should be set somewhere interesting. You know, it needs to be designed to be entertaining, to be interesting, to be relevant to the story. So that's a lot of research. And then obviously all the historic stuff takes a lot of research. Those historic chapters, even though they're a tiny portion, not a tiny, but 15% of the book, they take a lot of time to research because even if it's one line, they're I don't know, they're sitting there playing chess. Did they play chess in Istanbul in 1302? Did it exist there? So that takes a lot of time to get right because you can't make those mistakes. I feel they have to be correct. Question from Marjorie Takala. Hi, Marjorie. Uh, do you have a daily writing ritual schedule? You know, I shouldn't be saying this in case my editors are watching, but I don't actually. For me, writing is very much a free flow thing. Sometimes I'll be in the thick of it and I'll be writing, I don't know, 10 hours a day for 5 days, 8 days, nonstop. I'll be like uh, insanely obsessed and involved in this. But then I might take a break for a week. It's not a daily kind of. I know a lot of other writers, a lot of my friends who write novels do have very much an organized kind of uh, a very disciplined approach to writing. Sadly, I don't have that. I have to feel in the mood, I have to feel in the moment, and then I get completely immersed, and then it accelerates as I'm getting more and more into the book, it gets more and more involved because I actually don't pre-design the books. I don't know where the story is going. Uh, I feel I need to make sure the setup is rock solid, the characters, the motivations, the whole base of the story is there, and then I let the characters go. They need to to evolve according to their own logic. And the story takes me places that I didn't expect. So I become more and more curious to know how this story is going to end. And so I accelerate the writing because I'm just dying to know what happens. I want to get there. So it's a flexible process. Melly, hi Melly. What was going through your head when you first heard that you became a bestseller? Um, it was a very bizarre, this thing about heightened expectations. So, The Last Templar, by the time I finished it and we submitted it to publishers, uh, the Da Vinci Code had already come out. All the major publishers already had books prepared to go into that market to kind of fulfill the curiosity and interest that was generated by Dan Brown's book. So by the time I came to the party, kind of a year and a half later, maybe, the publishers loved the book, but they said, look, we already have books in that vein, and we don't have room for another. So the book ended up. So I had, frankly, so I had zero expectations for the book. I had Being a best-selling author was not on the map for me. At that point of my career, I still wanted to be a filmmaker. I still wanted to be able to take my daughters to the movies and sit back and watch a great movie, maybe a Pixar movie or something with my writing credit on it. And then, so we brought the book out independently. It jumped on Amazon. It went to number 3 by word of mouth, really, with zero marketing, which was unheard of, I think. And um, and then the big publishers came back and they bought it and then they released it properly. So by then there was kind of a heightened expectations, like, okay, hang on, this actually could start selling seriously. Um, and the first call I got, when the book came out in the US, it was early January 2006. The calls I was getting kind of a couple of weeks before it came out was, the numbers are looking good. There's a chance that we'll be on the extended list of the New York Times. So that's from 16 to 25, so not on the list proper. And that was already like science fiction to me. And I remember that call on that Wednesday night, saying you're number 10, and it was incredible news. I was thrilled to bits. And the next week, I lost my voice. I had no voice. I was so nervous because I thought it was going to be a 1 week wonder. And I literally had no voice. And my editor called and he said, you're actually number 5. You jumped up 5 places, which apparently is very, very rare. And then again, we jumped up to 4 the following week. So it was an amazing feeling. It was really completely unexpected, which made it all the much more enjoyable. Andrew, um, Andrew's asking, why write a book about Rasputin? What was so fascinating about him to you? Um, we've all, I guess, I'm sure you've seen stuff about Rasputin. You've seen maybe the Hellboy movies, or he's been in a lot of hokey stuff as well. So it's hard to kind of discern in terms of before actually reading about him. What was Rasputin really, really like? What was he, I mean, what's the truth about his history? For me, this came about almost not by design. I set out to write a book about the theme that interests me in this book was mind control, the kind of Manchurian candidate kind of experimentation that was going on um, in the during the Cold War, the CIA, the KGB, what they were doing. I really wanted to find out more about that and find out what was possible, what was doable, and where are we today with that technology, which is not easy to find. Um, and very early on in my research, I came across a Russian scientist. They talked about him, um, who was working in this field, and they talked about him as having Rasputin-like powers of persuasion, and uh, and that was pretty much the trigger for his involvement. I'm sure it was in the back of my mind somewhere, but it wasn't a conscious decision for this book. That's not how it started out. But as soon as I read that sentence, it became very, very clear to me that this was the perfect historical angle to the story. And I was working, the story was going to be anyway about something that has to do with the Cold War with Russia and the fact that Rasputin was in Russia. I mean, this whole story, obviously. It was just the perfect fit. So, and then when I started reading about it, he was just an incredibly fascinating character. Um, you could write a dozen thrillers about him. Celie James. Hi, Celie. I really loved your first two books, but lost track of your work. How could you do that? Until I saw the BookTrib notice. Thank you, BookTrib, for this chat. Do you have a mailing list? Um, I do. I don't know if actually, okay, I did on the previous incarnation of my website. We just had it redesigned and launched a couple of weeks ago, and there is no longer a newsletter sign up. However, if you're on Facebook, I find it a much more interactive way to communicate. So there's the big site, the one with 25,000 likes on it or whatever, is not my own. That's a Facebook controlled cut and paste of Wikipedia about the Last Templar. So if you look for Raymond Khoury official page, that's me. And you'll see from the posts, you'll see that it's interactive. I'm posting stuff about myself, about the books, whatever. So I would suggest go there and sign up, and any questions you like to ask, I'm there. We have um, we have a question from Mary Premorak. Hi, Mary. Do you find it easy to write in the first and third person? Um, I do actually. I had always been told that early on, I'd never tried it, and I had heard that I'd always heard that it's really difficult to pull off a first-person novel. I started writing in the third person. It just seemed natural to me. It was the books I enjoyed had pretty much been in that format, and it was kind of a natural way of adapting a screenplay into a novel. So I kept that up for the first four books. Um, and then I when I started writing The Devil's Elixir, which was the third Riley and Tess novel. Um, because that was The Last Templar and then two standalones, The Sanctuary and the Sign. And then I came back to Riley and Tess with The Templar Salvation, and then I was bringing them back for a third time. And I felt I was writing The Devil's Elixir, which I was thrilled with the plot. I thought it was probably the best plot in terms of plotting that I've ever written. But I felt something was missing. I wrote about 80 pages or so, and I don't know if it was because I'd done it before. I'd written two Riley and Tess novels in third person, and um, and I felt something was missing. Something was missing to excite me about what I was doing. Um, my editors loved the pages. Everyone was happy, but I felt for myself there was something missing. And I thought about it, and I thought this is very much. The Devil's Elixir is a very very personal story for Riley. It's a story that really hits him in the heart, much more so than the two Templar books that were these huge kind of plots that involved a big mystery that could change the world or whatever. This was very much a huge story, but it linked to him directly. He finds out stuff about his past that he didn't know. And I thought it's so much his story that it should be in the first person. So over a weekend, I went back and I rewrote those 80 pages. I just transferred them to first person. And I just really enjoyed it so much more. I found I could be much more personal. I could describe his feelings. I could use more of the humor I ascribed to him, which is probably my own. The observations, they felt just much more natural in the first person. I felt there was a much stronger link to a reader. And I think the feedback I've had from you all has been fantastic. So I carried that on with Rasputin's Shadow, and I think from now on I probably will only write in the first person in terms of the main character, and then switch to third person when we're with other characters. Mary Meyer Johnson, good evening to you, or good afternoon, I guess, wherever you are. I'm in London, so it's 8:25 here in the evening. Which of your books are you most pleased with? Is there anything you would change in one of your books if you could? Um, it's a tough question, I probably sound like a really smug kind of person, I guess, uh, to say I'm really pleased with all of them. I honestly, it's weird. I get asked, because other writers will often say, "Oh, there's that book I wasn't sure about, or whatever." I do really love them. Very happy with exactly the way they are. Is there anything I would change around my books? I would say yes. I would. I'm not sure how I would change it, but I think the ending of the Last Templar, the ending of the Tess and Riley story, not the historical story. Um, what happens, what they do in that final scene on the cliff, just that very last uh, page or two, I guess. Um, those were tricky to write. This was originally a screenplay, so it was designed to generate a movie that a studio would have had to put 100 million at the time. Today, it would probably be more like 150, $200 million to make because it's a big epic thing to film. And you couldn't really risk making something that would end on a very controversial note, something that could really irritate people or draw fire from different sides. Not at that scale of movie. So I often wonder whether, and so it naturally when I did the book, it kind of felt like it felt right at the time. I don't know if it feels right today. I don't know if I would have them do the same thing today. It's a nuance. It's not a big deal. It's what they do on the last page. But that's something I've often thought about. Um, Tim, Tim Cook, good evening to you. Good afternoon. I'm looking forward to Faceoff. Yes, so am I. In fact, I've got the manuscript. I'm cheating. I started reading it. I mean, how can I not read Michael Connelly and Dennis Lane writing a short story together? Can you give an overview of the book without giving any spoilers? Um, the overview I can give you is that all of us have written, so I've written, so just for those of you who aren't aware of this, Face Off is a book that 22 of us, I think, 22 authors have written, and it's for the International Thriller Writers is bringing it out. Simon& Schuster will bring it out next summer, next July, in hardcover and ebook. So it's 11 short stories written by 11 duos of writers. So Steve Berry and James Rollins have written one, which involves their main two characters in one story. So Dennis Lane, as I said, and Michael Connelly have written one together. Um, I've done my one with Linwood Barkley. So I used Matt Riley, and Linwood used his character from the accident, Glenn Garber. Um, and so it's a fun pairing of so we it's kind of a fantasy of kind of working with someone you really admire and create these short stories involving our lead characters, if you like. Um, it's great fun. It's really interesting. It's very different. The stories are written differently. Everyone wrote it in a different way. Me and Linwood, the way we worked was Linwood came up with just the opening sentence. He emailed me. He said, "How about that as the trigger for the story?" And it was great. It was a Linwood Barkley special, and then we basically traded it back and forth. So he wrote a chapter, and we didn't discuss what happened whatsoever. So he wrote a chapter and sent it to me, and his chapter was from the point of view of Glenn's character, and then I wrote the next chapter where Riley comes in and Riley meets Glenn, and off they go, and then sent it back to him, and we each kind of would put in a tricky seed for the other person to then have to deal with, and it was great fun. It was really enjoyable. So I mean, I hope the book does well. I think it's pretty unique. When I look at the roster of writers there, it's pretty exceptional. If you go onto my Facebook, you'll see the whole list. I've actually put a picture of the contents page. Let me have a look here. I probably have it somewhere. I'll be able to draw it up. But anyway, it's it's very cool, and I hope you all get to have a look at it. Sorry, I'm just looking here on my screen trying to find it, but I can't find the image I put up. Anyway, I'll come back to questions. Catherine Ivan. I understand that you illustrated children's books while at uni. In what medium did you work? Do you still draw or paint? Does this talent and experience aid you in the selection of cover designs of your books to the extent you're involved? Great question, Catherine. I illustrated children's books for Oxford University Press when I was studying architecture at the American University in Beirut, and it was it was great fun. I did about 6 or 7 books for them. They were books that were designed to teach English in that region, so the art needed to be to work in that region. You couldn't just take drawings from the US or the UK and transfer them there. Um, so I was an architect already, and I used to draw a lot of cartoons. I'm a huge comic book fan. I used to do cartoons in my high school yearbook. I did the covers of the yearbooks, that kind of thing. So, um, do I still draw or paint? Sadly, not. Very little. I just draw kind of little cartoons for, like, if my daughter has an exam coming up, I'll draw a little cartoon of the 4 of us and the cats, kind of wishing her good luck or that kind of stuff. Actually, I might, maybe I can show you a little. I don't know if you can see it, but okay, weirdly, let me see if I can show you this. It might be in reverse because it's a webcam on my Apple. But okay, so here, if you can see it, the image on, here we go. So the one on the left there is my wedding invitation, our wedding invitation, and the one on the right is my daughter's, the birth announcement of my daughter. So I get to do stuff like that, just fun. In what medium did I work? For the books, it was watercolor. It was ink and watercolor drawings. Does it help me in the selection of my cover designs? My first, I don't know if I have it here. Actually, I do. Let me show you my my first Templar cover. Um, it was a foreign edition. Okay, here's the Swedish one, I guess, or something. So this cover, you can't really tell, but this was the original. Remember I said Templar came out as an independent book, so this was the original cover, and it's a helmet with the two slots of the eyes, and in this slot. So the front cover, in this slot, you've got the Manhattan skyline. Um, and we actually went out and sourced this helmet in Budapest. I found it online. I had some people there, people I knew from a film production we did there, go out and find it and take this picture. And it had to be done in like 3 days. Anyway, but then the American cover changed. Obviously, it was the one you've seen, the big red cross on the white background. So yeah, I mean, it helps a lot because, in a sense, I'm very much into graphic design and visuals, and I'm quite fussy about fonts and stuff. And I've been really lucky. I think the designers of my covers at Dutton have been amazing. I think that Templar cover with the red cross on the white background was just so iconic. It was just a brilliant piece of design. Bookie Monster. Um, do you read your own reviews? Do they help or hurt how you write going forward? Um, I do read the reviews I get, the professional reviews I get, if you like. So I'll read nowadays. I'll read what bloggers are saying because I do consider them professionals. Um, it's their opinions that I value. Um, I read the trade reviews, if you like. I don't go onto Amazon or Barnes and Noble and stuff and look at reviews there. Um, I don't know. I think it's just too random. I don't get influenced by. I've never written with. So do they help or hurt? They don't really have an effect. I love it. Of course, I'm delighted. I'm thrilled to read a good review. Um, I'm uh, Will I get irritated if I read a bad one? Probably. Um, but it doesn't really affect, I don't write with any kind of conscious, it doesn't impact on the way I go about writing or choosing subjects or choosing the way I'm going to tell a story. I'm quite stubborn in the way I like to tell stories my own way. And but great reviews are always welcome. So if you do read the book and if you love it, please do leave a review. And they help in terms of, they help me, no, but they definitely help sales. I mean, we all use reviews. I mean, I review. If I'm going to buy an HDMI to HDMI cable, I'll do reviews. You know, we do rely on them. So I appreciate people who take the time to leave reviews. They're good ones. Celie James, how much story editing does your publisher contribute to your work? Um, Again, you know, this goes back to kind of my stubbornness. Not a lot. Generally, uh, I'll submit the completed manuscript. Um, Initially, I'll submit maybe a one-page outline of the story just to let them know what the book's about. They'll say, great, let's go ahead. Then I'll go out and write the whole book. And I rewrite a lot. So every day as I'm writing, before I write, I'll go back and I'll rewrite probably the entire chapter I wrote the day before. I rewrite maniacally. So I tweak stuff a lot as I'm going ahead in the hope that by the time it's finished, it's a very solid, very polished manuscript. Um, Generally, there'll probably be um, 3 or 4 points for discussion in a kind of a uh, one page of notes kind of subject, and generally, and I'll take my time to think about them. Some of them maybe, you know, I might incorporate the book. Others, no. I mean, it's a very personal thing. My name's on the book. It's the way I choose to tell a story. Um, and I think this is born out of the stubbornness is born out of the original story, which you've probably read about and you're already bored of. But initially, when The Last Templar went out to as a screenplay to be turned into a book, which wasn't my idea, we had a huge offer from a publisher. This is back in '96, and it was every writer's dream come true. And when I went to New York to sign that contract, they said, "Oh, there's one thing we'd like to change about your story. Let's lose the religion. Everything about the religion is, you know, it's just boring religion. Let's make the Templar treasure gold, jewels, something like that." And you know, I was stunned. I didn't know why that story would be interesting. Um, but there was a huge amount of money on the table. I hadn't made any money as a writer. I'd been writing for 3 or 4 years. Um, and I was under a lot of pressure to take that deal. And part of that was that, what do I know? I mean, maybe, you know, we're talking about one of the most one of the most important and successful publishers of mainstream fiction in Manhattan. You know, bestsellers lining the walls. And they're saying, and this is the head publisher, I mean, the publisher, not even the editor, but the publisher, saying, this is how we want to do this book. So I you know, I thought I was an idiot to be questioning what they wanted to do. But ultimately, it felt wrong to me, and I guess I was proven right because I walked away from this deal despite all the pressure and walked away from the money. And I thought that was the end of my career before it even started. Uh, it did trigger my screenwriting career, and many years later, when I turned The Last Templar into a book, what I did was write a book version of the screenplay with the religion, with everything I had in the original book, and the book was a success. So it kind of gave me a lot of confidence in my own storytelling, that my instincts to trust my instincts, and I kind of followed that ever since. So I'm not a writer who relies on on editorial guidance. I love hearing feedback. I love thinking about that feedback, and if things make sense to me, I'll be delighted to apply them. If they don't, I'm also delighted to let them go. Desmond, hey, uh, do you ever have to deal with writer's block? Does inspiration come easy, or is there something that helps you along, following a particular ritual, visiting a particular place? Um, I don't get writer's block. I get writer's laziness, I would say. You know, I get just distracted by, especially before actually starting a book. There'll be a trip coming up. There'll be something involving my kids. There'll be family stuff. There'll be we've had a lot of personal stuff the last few years, medical issues that needed a lot of care and attention, and it takes things like that for good, for better or worse, kind of can be distractions or yeah. Um, but in terms of writer's block, not really. I think um, having worked on TV series like Spooks, where there were there were times when I'd get calls from the producers saying we have a problem with the script, we don't have a story, we're shooting in 2 weeks, can you come up with something from scratch? Um, so I don't know. I must have read so many books and comics and watched so many TV shows and movies growing up that I've got this kind of well of inspiration to draw from. At the moment, there are 4 stories I want to write. There are 4 books I want to write, and I'd love to write them simultaneously. I wish I could just kind of press a button and just download everything that's in my mind or evolve it, because at the moment they're just the seeds of stories. They're not evolved stories. Um, so it's not so much writer's block. It's more the discipline of like, come on, you know you want to write the story, just sit down and write it. It's never a question of what's going to happen there. Oh my God, these Riley's stuck in this underground dungeon and he can't get away. Um, Marjorie, do you like paper or ebooks? Do you have a favorite author and genre? Paper or ebooks? I have to say, reading a physical book, I find much more enjoyable. Having said that, I read a lot on my Kindle because it's just so practical. At night in bed, it's lit up. You don't have to have a side light, so my wife can fall asleep without some a light annoying her. The same with her; she reads a lot as well. Um, um, Traveling, so hugely, as we all feel, I guess, hugely useful, hugely practical. But I have to say, there's something I don't know, nice about the physical book, the cover, kind of seeing where you are in the book, seeing those chapters, those pages. It's a different experience. Um, well, I have a favorite author and genre. Um, I tend to read a lot of thrillers, I guess, obviously. Who am I reading? I'm looking at my shelf. Things I haven't yet read that I want to read. History books, there's a lot of stuff. Constantinople, um, Subjects of the Sultans. What I have here? Um, there's a couple of Philip K. Dick books. Um, And then obviously, so Don Winslow, Robert Grace, Harlan Coben, Nelson DeMille, um, Brad Meltzer. Um, Blasphemy by Douglas Preston was interesting to me because it came out around the time that The Sign came out, and we were kind of dealing with a similar theme, so that was really interesting. Um, uh, Carlos Ruiz Zafón, I love The Shadow of the Wind. I always say that in interviews. It's become stupid, but I just love that book. I think it's just such a charming mystery thriller. It's hard to kind of pin it down to a genre, but it's just a beautiful piece of writing. If you haven't read it, I hugely encourage you to read that. Um, Also, yeah, Don Winslow's Savages I thought was a great book, and and a new favorite author of mine, Chuck Hogan, Devils in Exile. I thought was a great book. I love his writing. Um, Catherine, thank you for the enthusiastic show and tell response. Clearly, you have you deeply appreciate and have a visceral connection to the visual arts that is reflected in your art to this day. Yes, yeah, I do. Like, I mean, behind me is my Nikita poster, which I gotta move away from and you see it, which I think is just such a cool uh, movie poster. This is the French movie poster for Nikita. It's a bit faded now. I've actually got another one ready to kind of take its place, a fresh one with where the colors are still vibrant. Um, and it's a beautiful. It's a painting. It's a watercolor. It's not a picture of a star. It's just and that was one of my favorite when I first saw that movie. This is the original French Nikita, not the not the American remake. It was just such a fantastic piece of filmmaking that just blew me away. Um, and actually, and the soundtrack is something I listen to nowadays when I'm writing. The soundtrack to the Nikita is just so atmospheric. Um, yeah, we've done comic book versions of the books. I've got the artwork around them. I'll just show you around. There's a lot of comic book art on my walls. I collect a lot of comic book originals. My favorite artists. I go and meet. I get to meet them, and for me, it's such a kick to meet the heroes of my youth, and even present day, because I still read that stuff. Avery, um, has social media helped you to connect with your readers on a deeper level? What social media outlet do you use most and why? It really has. It's. I was late coming to the party, which is I think why the other Facebook page has 25,000 people signed on who I cannot interact with because it's just a dummy Wikipedia cut and paste page about the Last Templar, and it's not a page I can post on or which is very frustrating actually. Um, so I came late to the party. I don't know. I think initially maybe it was because the Last Templar I thought was quite a personal piece of writing, and it touched on religion, which is quite a personal topic, and I didn't I kind of shied away from getting involved in a debate mm, about that subject and the stuff I was writing about in the book, and I don't know, I felt it was too personal to kind of and maybe it was a bit early in internet. I don't know, 2006. No, we were pretty much on it. So which social media outlet do you use? I I use Facebook primarily. I have it set up so that anything I post on Facebook gets tweeted automatically, but I don't tweet. I, I kind of like that. I don't know. I don't find it interesting to hear that my favorite author is having dinner, whatever, or has an observation about uh, a sports game. What I feel that's kind of I like if something really motivates. Like example, I recently saw Rush, the Ron Howard movie, which I adored. I took my 16-year-old daughter who hates Formula One, has knows nothing about motor racing, couldn't be less interested. Um, okay, admittedly, it has an actor who's one of her favorite heartthrobs, so it's kind of helped coax her into coming along to see it. And she loved the movie. It was a really fantastic piece of filmmaking. Um, I told the producers they deserve Oscars for this movie, and they said, "Well, we'll be happy to recover our costs because it's not a mainstream subject." But I gather it's doing really well, and I do hope it gets some awards. So I posted about that on Facebook. It's not about my books, but it's about something that I felt very strongly about, and I I had to post it. I love this. Um, I went to the 9/11 memorial on a few weeks ago, and again, it was a very moving experience, and I felt that's something I like to share. So it's kind of events that I feel are worth sharing. I like sharing, and what it's done is I love hearing from readers. I think the what I love about my Facebook page is I think the people who are on it are there specifically because they've signed on in order to send me a message about the books or to say how much they like to, or to ask me a question or whatever. So it's very much it's not people have signed on just randomly. It's a very strong core group of fans, and I we've had dialogues now going on for years, and I really enjoy that and I appreciate that. Tim Cook is asking, will you possibly be in New York for Thriller Fest next year? I will definitely be in Thriller Fest for New York next year because that's where we're launching Faceoff. So we're all coming to it. You've got to come. Uh, would be great. If so, to my favorites in one place, you and Steve Berry. So Steve, so let me tell you about Steve. Steve is he's a very good friend. I didn't know Steve. I knew he had a book coming out around the time of The Last Templar. I knew it was a competing book. We both used the same quote of Pope Leo the Tenth on our back cover. And the day So the week the book came out, the week later, I got the call that we're on the New York Times list. And then the next day, I get an email through my publishers, which was from Steve saying, "Hi, you don't know me. I'm Steve Berry. I'm writing to you to say congratulations. This is an an incredible achievement. Your first book, New York Times. Congratulations." And I was stunned. So this is me coming from the film business, where you cannot imagine how impossible it would be for someone who is ostensibly a big competitor of yours. And our publishers were kind of battling to bring out the books ahead of each other. They were kind of racing to see who would come out first. So to get that kind of email was just floored me. So I immediately contacted him, and we became good friends. We've been on holiday together with our families. Steve is a great guy, a very generous guy, and I love his books. Um, so Faceoff is one additional reason for me to be at Thriller Fest next July. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're all going to be there. Michael Connolly is going to be there. Dennis Lehane's going to be there. Joe Finder. It should be a lot of fun. And Tim, just have to say, loved you taking the dare to post a pic with the Captain America hat. It's fun to take the challenge of a teenager. They do challenge me a lot, but in a good way, I think. Yeah, come on, it's fun. They have a really cool sense of humor, which I really enjoy, and yeah, I'm going back there. I'm actually there on Thursday, so we're going there. There's parents' weekend at the university, and we're going there for it. And so could be a new challenge coming up. I hope. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. I have a lot of other silly hats, by the way. I may just, without the challenge, I may just go and take a picture with I don't know, one of the other ones. Mary Primerax asking, do you ever see people reading your books, and how do you react to that? Actually, I haven't had that many opportunities. I always used to think there's like an exclusion zone around me, like especially in England when the books would come out, um, and I'd be traveling, so I'd go through the airport and I'd look for it, and it was like it's not there. I'd be like, "Are you kidding me? It's like it's on the bestseller list, and where's the book?" And so I'd call my agent and I'd say, "Isn't the book on sale here?" And there'd always be some reason, oh, it's been delayed or it's sold out or whatever. And so I always felt there was this like torture bubble that some I don't know some crazy evil uh, um, genie was some voodoo thing that was being done to me. Um, but on the few occasions that I have seen someone reading it on a plane or in a hotel, or yeah, on a beach, even on a beach in Greece, which was like pretty cool, the Greek version, um, it's very flattering. It's really flattering, and I kind of I shy away from it. I'm like, oh, and inevitably it'll be my daughters will like go, Daddy, come on, you got to go say hi. You got to go tell them it's your book. I'm like, of course I'm not going to do that. No, 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 go. And then they'll go and they'll say, are you enjoying the book? Yes. Would you like to meet the author? He's right there. And it's like, okay, fine. Uh, it's very flattering. It's a great feeling. Jacqueline's asking, do you think mind control weaponry is a real threat in the near future? Um, I have to say I do think it is. I think the level of technology is pretty advanced and it's pretty scary. I think there's a minor leap that needs to be done um, in order to do it remotely. We do have I mean, there is the technology exists today, which is something I used in the sign, which minor spoiler alert here if you haven't read the sign. And which is the thing I put as a question on the giveaway in one of the Facebook giveaway competitions, um, was what does LRAD stand for? And that's the long range acoustic device. So this is a weapon where, if you imagine you're at a basketball game, so you're surrounded by people, and they can direct a beam at you specifically and make you hear something. So if someone wants to give you a message remotely, they can talk to you in that way. So only you will hear it. No one else will hear it. The person next to you will not hear this. Um, they can beam a very disturbing sound at you. They can beam a sound at you that can make you feel sick, make you throw up, make you feel nauseous, make you that exists. Um, so it's not the stuff I talk about in my book is obviously an extrapolation. It's not there yet, but do we really know where things are? I'm always of the view that we don't know the state of the art of these things, but it's not inconceivable whatsoever that if we're not there, we're very close to it, and that's very disturbing. Sergio Santana. Um, so who inspired you as a writer when you were just starting out? Um, so when I was just starting out, we're talking screenwriting here because that's when I was starting out, it was as a screenwriter, and at the time, I guess the really successful screenwriters were, um, and this may sound silly, looking back, but like Shane Black had been paid $4 million for Lethal Weapon, so he was huge at that time. Joe Esterhaas had been hugely successful with Basic Instinct. William Goldman, I think, really, although I met him and we didn't get along at all, and that's another story. Um, but uh, but he really inspired me because he wrote so many amazing screenplays in very different genres, and some of them were books as well. So if you think Marathon Man, um, The Princess Bride, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, um, very, very different movies, very different genres, and all created by one guy. Um, in books, I would say, again, not the obvious name, but for me, someone like Michael Crichton was incredibly impressive because, again, he worked across, different stories, different characters, different genres, ER, Jurassic Park, whatever, The Andromeda Strain, his first book. Very interesting concepts. He would take these really intriguing ideas and write them very successfully. Stephen King, huge inspiration. Just again, the level of depth of character and as prolific as he is, and again, working different genres, Carrie and um, Stand By Me, every writer's favorite, Misery. So I guess those they were both, and then going back further, okay, Hemingway, huge influence growing up. The Sun Also Rises remains one of my favorite books to this day. Okay, well, I guess this is it. We've got 5 winners for the books, and they are Tim Cook, Mary Meyer Johnson, Celie James, Desmond, and Catherine Ivan. So, Tim, Mary, Celie, Desmond, and Catherine, congrats. I guess the book will be coming your way soon. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know. Come on Facebook, on my page, on my official page, and do let me know. I'd love to hear from you, seriously. Thank you, Tim, Mary.